Welcome back into another episode of Red Zone Talk. I'm Owen Burke. He's Tim Hunt. I am joined again once by my devilishly handsome co-host after flying solo last week. We're ready to talk some football. I'm happy to have you back. I had a doozy of an episode last week. Filled a full hour by myself. We talk about that?
I saw.
Just rambling. Just rambling on, folks.
When I got it, I was like, damn, this is longer than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. You're like, I used to do the solo shows every once in a while, so I know how to fill
Quite a few
time.
of them, didn't you?
Yeah.
You did like 8 or something.
8 or 9, yeah, for a while there. But glad to have you back. It's definitely a lot easier. And I'm sure it's a lot more enjoyable, not just hearing me ramble about the same four things for an hour. So we got some stuff to talk about because there's been some shit going down in the league this week. We're going to start hot and heavy. You want to kick it off for us?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Cat being traded to the – oh, sorry, wrong show.
Oh, wrong show.
Wrong show. I wish we could talk about that. I'd love to talk about that, but no one would care. Everyone would be like, this is football season. What are you guys talking about? First thing I kind of want to talk about just quickly is Thursday night. Like, what a night for just sports in general. That was a phenomenal game. We're recording this Saturday morning. It'll probably be out Saturday at some point, but what a night for sports in general. It's playoff baseball. So that's always fun.
That's another thing I didn't talk to you. Pete F. and Alonso, dude. Yeah. Holy cow. We got to talk about that after. Let's not get into that now.
Yeah, but we got playoff baseball. Thursday night football, man. Tampa Bay. We dogged on that division a little bit too much. We were like, oh, it's Atlanta's division to lose, but they're only going to have 11 wins. They might have 2 teams make the playoffs from that division, which I never in a million years would have thought that. But
Tampa is the equivalent of, I want to say LeBron James, but that's just too high of praise. Like, you're like, this team just consistently gets older, and you're like, okay, they're going to fall off the cliff this year.
Yeah,
and they just don't. They're like, they're still really good.
Yeah.
You were supposed to suck 2 years ago because your average age is like 32, but here they are. They're still really good. And I had a buddy ask me on Wednesday at work. He was like, oh, who's playing tonight? I was like, oh, Atlanta and Tampa Bay. And he's like, who you got? And I was like, wow, Tampa Bay money line, easy. And I was like, the fact that I said that probably means that Atlanta's going to win, which sure enough, I said that and he took Atlanta money line. And I was like, good for you, buddy. Way to fade the old.
Way to hedge it there.
Yeah, way to fade me there. That was the right call. Kirk Cousins. Holy hell. Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards before Justin Herbert threw for 200 this season. How about that?
I think a lot of it too is like anytime you fall in love with like a wide receiver, you're like, man, this guy's so good. And you're like, why has he just been underperforming? And then it's like you give him a decent quarterback and you're like, oh, like Drake London looks like a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL now. And when they drafted him, that's kind of what they expected. And they haven't been able to get that out of him, but it turns out Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, trying to think who else they've had since they've drafted him. But
Taylor Heineke played a couple games.
Taylor Heineke throwing him the ball. That turns out that wasn't the option. That wasn't it. So this has really been a nice little comeback story for him too. So
all the Kyle Pitts memes after he went for 88 yards, which is his career high outside of his rookie year, by the way. That's really sad. That's sad. Yeah, I still think they've got a couple question marks. Like, I can't figure out Bijan and Tyler Algier in the backfield because we all know, like, if you were to say, who do you want to start your team with? Who's the more talented running back? Who's the better running back? 99% Bijan Robinson. But for some reason, Tyler Algier has been so much more efficient in the backfield. And it's kind of getting to a point where you're like, well, we can't not give him carries. Like, it's kind of starting to turn into like how Jaylen Warren and Najee was last year, except Bijan's still really good. It's just Tyler Algier is repping 5.5 a carry for no goddamn reason. And you're like, well, we got to fucking give him the ball, I guess.
He is a nice change of pace back for them. Like, he is more of that undersized burst guy. Mm-hmm. And like Bijan feels like, he's a special playmaker. That's really the only way to. Third downs, you really don't want Tyler Algier in there, but it is interesting. Oh, you have a cat on the countertop. I was like, man, what is moving back there? Threw me off for a second. Thought you had a ghost, but no, they're an interesting team to say the least. They have a lot of offensive riches. The Justin Simmons signing, man, like that's just wild. They picked him up so late in the year, and he's looked so good for them.
Yeah,
like I can't believe it. Honestly, I was just a little blown away by how lucky they've been with some of the pickups that they've had. But Tampa Bay didn't go down without a fight. That is for dang
No,
sure. So,
no, they
but
didn't. They kind of handed the game away at the end. I know a lot of their guys were upset, but 'tis football. You got to put teams away, and they didn't put Atlanta away, and Kirk Chains took advantage. So
Kirko chains, can we? Like, I just don't get why everyone's
I love
obsessed
it.
with that. It's so stupid to me, but
The greatest nickname ever.
people love it. Like, and he just was so weird after the game doing
Oh,
like
yeah.
the what is it,
The swag surf.
the swag surf. Yeah, I knew it
It's
was like
fucking
something like that. And you're just like, he doesn't know what it is, and he
no.
clearly doesn't understand it, but he's just vibing.
He's just vibing. Yeah,
The thing I'll say is I love that Kirk just loves whatever city he's in. Like
yeah.
that's I think like I've never seen a guy who was so loved by Minnesota then go to like Atlanta, which is like the opposite
The
kind of city.
polar opposite. I don't know if you could get more opposite than
And
that.
he loves it just as much. Like
Yeah.
the guy just embraces wherever he's at. Like, you know, people talk about Lambeau, like you go there and it's like the small town feel, and you just be like, Kirko doesn't care. Kirk just
Nope.
wherever he's at, he's like, Minnesota. I can be a Minnesota guy. I could be Atlanta guy.
Yeah, I could
It's
throw
like,
some khakis on.
yeah,
He
like
goes to
just
Atlanta. You're like, I could throw some chains on.
yeah, I can put some chains and I'll do the swag surf with everybody after the game. You're just like, where is this
Yeah.
coming from?
Say what
But
you want about Kirk Cousins, all-time vibes guy, undeniable. He
yeah,
just
he's just a
fits.
solid locker room. Like that's what it feels like. It just he's not gonna make the locker room, but he's most certainly just gonna like if a locker room's too low, he's gonna get it to the right spot for sure. Like
Yeah,
that's his area of expertise. So um no, I'm happy. I'm happy the Falcons are good. Like
yeah,
that's really like for all the hope that this team has had over the last couple of years, I'm glad they're finally in a pretty good spot. So
I agree.
all right. So now we got to talk about the big news around the NFL. Davante Adams preferring a trade, which I think this is the first time ever that someone's preferred a trade
Prefer to trade.
instead of demanding a trade. So that's somewhat unique.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's a really interesting situation.
yeah,
Um, I'm surprised he didn't. I'm surprised they kept him through this offseason.
yeah,
Because last year you could tell it was really getting to affect him. And I think part of what I was reading was that he felt obligated to Antonio Pierce was part of it.
yeah.
Uh, because, you know, a lot of the veterans stood up and said, hey, Antonio Pierce should be the head coach.
This is our
And
guy.
yeah, and then Josh Jacobs got traded. And then if Davante left, it would have been a lot of those dudes just kind of bailing on the coach, which
Yeah,
is not a great look. But it's weird. There's a lot of teams with wide receiver needs, but he's a 32-year-old wide receiver that I'm, you know, I still think he's an elite wide receiver. I just don't know if he is what he was when they traded for him. So
yeah. I think right now it has to be a team that is contending that is going to go after this guy. This is not a like, oh, we'll build around Devontae for the next 5 years. Devontae's not going to be playing in 5 years. Like if you have a window right now and you're looking to capitalize and win this year or next year, this is your guy. Now, as far as cost, what it's going to take to get him, I don't know what it's going to look like. Because every former receiver trade around this age and around this style of leverage gets a sixth or a fourth round pick at best. But I do think a lot of teams might line up to
I think he could get like what did Stefan went for? What did he go for a second?
third.
No, I thought he went for more.
He may have. I'd give up a second for Davante Adams if I was a contending team. Truthfully, like you gotta. Which the Raiders are saying what they want a second and some change to get him
Yeah,
at
so
this point.
the Diggs trade was Diggs, fourth rounder last year, a fifth rounder this year for the Texans' second this upcoming year.
Yeah,
So it was they had to like add some to
add
get
some
the
stuff
second.
to get the second.
But I think that's going to be a pretty close value. I mean, Stephon Diggs is slightly younger. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. A year or two younger.
Yeah, I think. How old is he? He's 30, so yeah, he's 2 years younger.
2 years younger.
and they're equally as expensive. That's really the kicker.
Yeah.
It's not like Davante Adams is like a middle of the market guy. I think his contract is pretty significant, and that's part of the reason what takes him out of the like the Chiefs. Everyone's like, oh, maybe the Chiefs. It's like I don't think that's even possible with what his cap hit's going to be. Let me see. This is 24, right? His cap number's 25. So that's actually not too bad, but
that's not awful, yeah.
Oh, it goes up significantly. Next year it's 44, and the year after that's 45. Holy cow.
Good Lord.
Oh, but none of it's guaranteed. So but yeah, I mean 25, and then you got to prorate it based on the game. But yeah, he's still owed quite a bit. I think it's 18 million, probably somewhere in there. So it'll be interesting. I agree. It's got to be a team that's got to know that they're in it. Do you have a favorite team that you think he'll end up at?
I don't know. It's tough because I feel like a lot of the contenders, obviously Baltimore's been tossed in there. He gave the good old Edgar Allan Poe post on his Instagram stories yesterday that lit the world on fire for a solid half an hour. Poor people were like, wait, this means absolutely nothing. I think a sleeper team that I do want to talk about is Washington going after him.
I like Washington a lot fit
Yeah.
wise. Him and Terry McLaurin would be pretty good.
That is a dangerous 1-2 punch.
And it's a young team. I say it's a young team. They have Jane Daniels. The rest of the team is very old, right? Like Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz. It is an old weapons team. So, but that's what you want. You want to put experience around your rookie QB.
Yep.
I don't think Dallas makes very much sense, right?
No.
People are throwing that out there, and it's like, I don't think he's going to play running back, and I don't think he's going to play offensive line. And so those are really the two things that they need more than anything else.
Yeah, and Jerry's not going to shell out for it. And at the end of the day, that trade is just to keep fans in the seats for the rest of the year because they could go make that move. It's not going to, like, their defense to me is the biggest need right now. Like, they cannot stop a nosebleed as far as the run game is concerned. And again, their corners, while being uber talented, Deron Bland is still out as far as I know right now. And both him and Diggs have had injury issues the last 2 years. So, and Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence is on IR. He's out for at least 4 weeks. And Micah, I think, is out this week with a sprained ankle. So, like, they are limping as far. Like, they couldn't stop the run, and they just lost their 2 of the 3 best players on the defensive side of the ball. So, a Davante Adams trade right now is Jerry basically throwing in the towel saying, at least we're going to sell tickets. That's really all I care about.
Yeah.
So, Dallas makes no sense to me.
The other one that I found really interesting is the Lions. They have the cap space, and he would be just a secondary. Because if you're the Lions, you kind of got to go, all right, we're going all in. Our main competition in the NFC this year, it's appearing to be, I mean, San Francisco's down this year, right? Like, San Francisco looks beatable. The Eagles also look very beatable this year. Both of those teams have had some ups and downs. The Rams are at maybe an all-time low for Stafford being healthy.
Yeah.
The NFC is wide open for the taking. So long term, it probably doesn't make a ton of sense. But for this year, if you wanted to push your chips in and say, hey, let's go after this, let's get it, that team would be really interesting.
Yeah, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Davante Adams, and then Jameson Williams quickly becomes a top, if not the top, receiving core in the league. To be able to tell Jameson Williams, like, hey, you're running go routes. That's about it. You're probably not going to touch the ball other than that, which I don't love as much for his development. But at the end of the day, we're here to win chips, you know. So if you got to set Jameson Williams back a year or two because he's going to lose some targets to Davante Adams, it's going to help you win a Super Bowl. So, I mean, I think the Jets are the other team that's gotten tossed a lot, obviously.
Jets make some sense.
With the connection to Rodgers and everything.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the teams we talked about, and then the Saints and the Jets, which is just him reuniting with Derek Carr or reuniting with Aaron Rodgers.
There's one team, too, in your division I really like, the Steelers. I think the Steelers make a lot of sense for a player like him. I don't know if you're him. I like Justin Fields. Justin Fields has played really well this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the transition you're trying to do necessarily, but I think that him in Pittsburgh, because they were really in on Brandon Ayuk, right? They were like, I think a trade was committed in terms, but
it was there. It's just they went to Ayuk and was like, sign the extension we gave you or you're going to Pittsburgh. And he signed the extension. So that should tell you what a lot of guys probably think about Pittsburgh right now.
And they also had a trade apparently lined up with New England, and he was like, absolutely not. I'm not signing a long-term deal in New England, so don't even think about it.
Yeah.
So New England backed out. But I don't think Davante makes any sense for the Patriots this year. But
yeah, I think the timeline doesn't line.
Pittsburgh would be interesting. I know and the weirdest thing to me is Cleveland says they're still in, which I don't understand that. I'm not sure that makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
You're 1-3, and I don't know if your wide receiver core is really the issue.
You're 1-3. You haven't scored 20 points this year, and also you're the most expensive offense in the NFL. By cap hit, their offense is the most expensive offense in the NFL.
Crazy.
Now, yeah, I know. They're going to get Nick Chubb back, but again, like for Cleveland and Pittsburgh, it goes the same reason to me. Like the timeline just doesn't line up. To me, that is if either of those teams were to make that deal, that is a front office saying, we're all in. We're going to try to win a Super Bowl. And literally the other 31 teams and their fan bases are like, you're a long fucking way from, like, you're not in a position where you're like, oh, one trade puts us over the top. You're not close to it. Like, I don't think Pittsburgh or Cleveland is close to winning a Super Bowl right now. Like, Pittsburgh might be able to luck their way into it with the Chiefs being down. I will tell you this, like, if somehow it gets down to it, the Chiefs get knocked out of the playoffs and it's the Steelers are left in there and then, maybe Buffalo and Baltimore, right? Maybe Buffalo takes care. Like, Pittsburgh is not beating either of those two teams. Even if they could get lucky and beat the Chiefs, because the Chiefs can always seem to beat Buffalo and Baltimore in the playoffs. That's just how it's been the last couple of years. Bless you.
Thank you.
If they were to somehow beat the Chiefs, I don't see them beating Baltimore and or Buffalo down the stretch. Like if it even is Buffalo, I mean, it's gonna be at this point because Miami's looked horrible. The AFC is thinned out very fast, right? Like
it's interesting because I mean, Buffalo's look good. The Jets are still the Jets. They're a little bit of a mess. Miami without Tua shows that it's like I think Mike McDonald or is that his name?
McDaniel.
McDaniel. I was like, God, that sounds so wrong. I'm like, it's close, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think without Tua has kind of shown that he's not quite Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah.
Like it's been, and their backup quarterback play hasn't been terrible, but it hasn't been great either.
Yeah. McDaniel frustrates the hell out of me because, like, I agree with you. Losing Tua is a massive blow to your team, but it should change the way you play offense, right? You can't expect Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley, or I don't know why they didn't keep Mike White around. Like, Mike White's thrown for 400 yards in a regular season game, and teams, the AFC East is passing him around on practice squads. Like, this guy's not better than Skylar Thompson to be a backup for somebody. That baffled me in the offseason.
He definitely felt like a better backup fit. If Tua is going to be your primary guy, like I get wanting to have a backup that matches your starting QB. It makes sense, right? It's logical. Then why keep Skylar Thompson?
Yeah, I was like, we're K-State guys. Like that's not Tua Tagovailoa back there. We've watched that guy for years, and like he's limited at the quarterback position. That's a guy that I wouldn't mind having in Baltimore, right? Like I don't think Arizona or Indy wouldn't mind having him behind, some of their more mobile guys.
Yeah.
So, and the thing that really, really pisses me off with McDaniel and how the Dolphins have looked this year is you have Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. And both of those guys were dynamite last year. And you drafted Jalen Wright. Like, as fast and as talented as that receiver room, the running back room is just as, if not faster, and as talented as far as running backs go. and they just refuse to run the ball. They're like, oh no, we're out. Like, I feel like I saw this take and like it's really stupid, but it makes sense. Like, he's gotten really caught up in the whole like Miami Vice, cool guy, air the ball out, beat teams by 40 kind of vibe, where it's like sometimes you just got to put your fucking helmet on, tighten the shit out of your chin strap, and run somebody over. And they have the personnel in the backfield, and he's just like, how about Skylar Thompson, 45 passing attempts? Let's do that instead. And you're like, just, what are we doing? Like, you have the personnel.
Do you know what their point differential on the season is?
Oh, God, it's probably one of the worst outside of the Jacksonville and Cleveland, I would assume.
It is the worst. They are minus 58 on the season.
Good Lord.
You said Cleveland isn't terrible. Cleveland's not great, but they're not too bad. Jacksonville's minus 49, so they're, I think, third. Second is the Carolina Panthers, minus 56. So,
yeah, like no one sit here and you're like, I bet the Dolphins and the Panthers will be about on the same wavelength. Yeah. Tua or not. And that's the thing. Tua could have retired before the year started. In week 4 of the preseason, Tua hangs it up. He's not going to play football anymore. I still would not sit here and tell you that those teams would be anywhere close to each other coming into the year. And to me, that's a fail on Mike McDonald because, again, you have personnel to be a successful team. For being that crafty, offensive wizard, he has playmakers, and he is just shit in the bed play calling wise right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's been bad, but the AFC is thin. I mean, Houston is somewhat of a team to contend with. I think.
I agree.
We'll have to see what CJ Stroud looks like. I mean, he looked good in the playoffs last year, but it's a whole nother ball game. The AFC West is wide open, right? Like you could see the Chargers potentially sneaking into a playoff spot this year. The Broncos, depending on which Bo Nix we get. You could see them somehow sneaking in a spot.
Yeah.
There is a lot of like uncertainty of, who's going to fill out, the wild card spots for the AFC this year.
Yeah. Which I just know that Pittsburgh is probably going to sneak into one. I'm going to have a whole ton of Steelers fans telling me that Justin Fields is better than Lamar Jackson in a year's time. I'm not still fully sold on Pittsburgh as a team. Yeah, Justin Fields looked great against Indy, especially in the second half. I watched that game just because I was like, it was, around noon on a Sunday. I was like, oh, what game do I want to watch? I was like, oh, 3-0 Steelers, Colts. I was like, I'll watch this game. Didn't expect to see my Lord and Savior Joe Flacco on the field that day, but like Fields didn't look good in the first half. And like everybody keeps talking about it. They scored 3 touchdowns for the first 3 weeks. Like you're like, oh, 3-0, win's a win. I was like, if they have a different kicker, they might be 0-3 going into this week. Like, and they had Justin Tucker instead of Chris Boswell, they might be 0-3, which is a crazy sentence, but that's where we are right now with football.
Tucker's been bad.
Yeah,
this might be his last year.
It hurts my soul, brother. Like, I have a whole bunch of like, after we started 0-2, and then we almost blew the game against Dallas. I work around a lot of Cowboys fans, and they're like, "Oh, we almost had it. You almost went 0-3," and I was like. Even if we would have, like, I'm in more denial about Justin Tucker's fall off than my team's inability to close games right now. Like I don't know if I've went through more pain this season than watching him struggle. And I'm not going to get into it. There's theories on why it's happening, but just know that like anytime you see him kick a ball and it doesn't go through the uprights, know that like I'm hurting on the inside.
There's a grown man wincing in pain somewhere around the world.
100%. You see Justin Tucker kick a field goal, I need a message of condolence. Please check on me.
Please check on me. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I mean, Davante Adams it's going to be interesting. I don't see him being traded in division is the other part of that.
It's not going to happen. People are like, Kansas City needs a receiver. Never in a million years, or LA for that fact.
And Kansas City has no money to work with.
Yeah.
So I think Kansas City really hopes he gets traded somewhere and they can take on a guy. Like if Cleveland was somehow involved, hey, we'll grab Jerry Jeudy. We'll take Jerry Jeudy back in that.
You talking about? I mean, that's a bad contract at this point, too, though. So,
is Jerry Judy's contract bad? How bad?
Yeah, remember he signed like a 4-year, $95 million deal in the offseason or something along those lines.
No,
remember he got fucking overpaid this year.
His cap number this year is $4.7 million.
Yeah, it's not bad now, but I was pretty sure it's a 4-year extension from what I remember.
He goes up to 8 next year.
It's not bad.
And then the year after that, 10. Oh, dude.
That's not terrible.
13 after 13 after that. Oh, and then the last year of the deal, dude, he did that extension's so fake. So his cap number in 2028 is $28.9 million, and it's not guaranteed though. So
he got boned. That's a horrible deal.
Yeah.
So nobody's paying him that money.
If they cut him, let's say they cut him after the 2027 season, his dead cap number, you ready for this, is $3.5 million.
Oh,
so
yeah. You're living. It's really not bad. But yeah, like Cleveland gets Davante and then KC calls about Jerry Jeudy or Amari Cooper. You're like, that's not a bad workout. Like, I think that's a pretty decent deal.
So you know what I mean? I'm just saying like something like that where Josh Palmer or Josh Reynolds becomes available if Detroit makes that deal or something. I don't know. I'll be very intrigued to kind of see how that plays out. But all right, we got to talk about how wrong we were. I don't know how much time you spent talking about Doug Peterson. I know it was one of your fan questions, but I'm very curious to see if he makes it through the season. I think it's going to be very, very intriguing.
I'm absolutely gobsmacked by what's happening in Jacksonville right now. What the hell is going on? I did talk about like what was wrong with Jacksonville. I didn't touch a ton on just Peterson by himself. I think the issues do start with him. Like, what's going on, man? Like,
yeah,
what the hell's the issue?
It's going to be interesting because if they're 0-4 going into, or 0-5, excuse me, going into the London game, and that game's important in Jacksonville, right? Like that's
an extra home game.
Yeah, that's a home game. That's a home game away from home for them, right?
Yeah.
And so if they're 0-4 going in there, or 0-5, excuse me, and they put that product on the field and then they lose to the Bears somehow, I don't think he makes it. I think it could be a Lane Kiffin fired on the tarmac in another country type of situation.
Yeah.
And I know everyone's talking, Bill Belichick coming in the middle of this, that he would never do that. Just throw that. Stop talking like that. Like that's no coach. We saw how badly it went with Jeff Saturday. That's who it was. I couldn't think of the name, but Jeff Saturday. No coach like Belichick is going to be like, I'll take over mid-season and give this a swing. Like, what are you talking about?
No,
they'll promote somebody who's in-house. Go ahead.
No, that's the difference between Jeff Saturday and Bill Belichick. Is Bill Belichick smart enough to be like, this team is 5 weeks into the season. I haven't even been in the locker room yet. I'm not going to try to coach them. Jeff Saturday is like, leader of men, 1-7. That's the difference. Belichick is smart enough to not put himself in that position. I don't know what the answer is. I do think, again, the issues start up top with Peterson, but at the same time, I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence and I'm like, the defense has sucked. There's nothing that Trevor Lawrence can do about that. Yeah. And they're a talented group on defense. Like, is it the best defense in the league? No, but it's nowhere near the worst. I can tell you that much as far as talent goes. So at some point, I got to look at a guy who I don't know if he still is, but at one point had the tag of being the highest paid player in the NFL, highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and a guy who was Andrew Luck, apparently coming out of college, a generational quarterback, and being like,
yeah.
Again, I get it. The defense sucks. I'm not seeing anything from that guy under center right now.
It's been bad, right? Like, I know the weapons aren't elite, but they're not nothing, right? No. Brian Thomas has looked to be a serviceable rookie. You have Christian Kirk, who
looked good last year.
Yeah, has always been a productive receiver for the last 3 or 4 years, and they can't do anything. Travis Etienne is a pretty solid back as well. Yeah. So,
like, talent-wise, again, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram had a breakout year last year, right? You have Etienne and Tank Bigsby in the backfield. It's a great 1-2 punch, 2 young running backs. The O-line's not awful. Like, the fact that we could sit there and name 2 running backs, a tight end, and 2 to 3 receivers on this team,
Yeah.
Like, not every team has the luxury, right? We were looking at teams' depth chart in the offseason, and we were like, okay, I know the one, I know the two. Who the hell are these four other receivers? Like, these guys are going to struggle through the air. We could sit here and name weapons for them all day long, right? And there's got to be a come to Jesus meeting in Jacksonville. And if, oh, there it is. There's the jailbreak. He's coming. If Doug Peterson wants to save his job, it's got to be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Here, I'll mute you for a second if you need to.
Yeah, I'll go do that.
But yeah, I think they're in hot water. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what they decide to do, what they end up doing. Yeah, I knew that looking at that schedule to start, you start week 1 with Miami. That's a tough game, right? With Tua healthy in that offense, that's going to be a tough game. Then you have Cleveland at home. You probably should win that. Cleveland's not that much better of a team. Then you go to Buffalo. That's obviously going to be a really tough game. You're probably going to lose that one. Then you have to go to Houston, another tough one. So they've really got to turn it around. They could go on a 3-game win streak here. You got Colts, Bears, Patriots, and then you get the Packers, and you should have Jordan Love back for the Packers by then. So, but then it gets rough again, and then you go Eagles, Vikings, Lions, Texans. So I think there's some hope, but I just don't think this team is going to produce the way a lot of people, including myself, thought they were. Right? We've been waiting for him to kind of take it over and go from there, and we just really haven't seen that. So so now we're going to talk about some teams that maybe should think about selling this year. We've got the Browns, Bengals, and Dolphins. I think it'll be interesting. Oh, and you'll have to unmute yourself. I can't unmute you. So it'll be interesting to see. The Browns, I don't think they're quite ready to sell.
Yeah.
They're probably on that cusp of thinking about it. You know what I mean? There could be some potential selling, but I just don't think they can. There's such a weird spot that, I don't know what they do. I don't know who you sell. Amari Cooper,
Like, who would have thought that a team with Deshaun Jackson would be a quarterback away? Like, that's a crazy sentence, especially
Deshaun Watson. Yeah.
Deshaun Watson, a quarterback, and you're like, we're a quarterback away. Like, Andy's on a fully guaranteed contract. If you hear my son crying in the background, he's okay. His mom's in there with him. She's just currently asleep, so he's very unhappy. But yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you sell, Myles Garrett? Like, there's such a talented team still. The offensive line's good, right? Nick Chubb gets healthy, they're going to be good there. Jared Judy and Amari Cooper, David Njoku, like, they have pieces. Like, the fact that they didn't call Joe Flacco after the year that he had last year, because that was one of the questions they asked him after he came in and played so well in Indy last week. They were like, what happened with the Browns? And he's like, I don't know. Never got a call from them. Like, they didn't offer me to come back at all. That's insane. Deshaun Watson hasn't played well.
Here's why I think he didn't get the call back is because right now they'd be calling for Joe Flacco to play.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The team is so bad with Deshaun Watson that they would be like, let's put Joe back in. Joe was great for us last year. We won a playoff game with Joe Flacco. Yep. So I think that's the issue.
I agree. And it's one of those things where I understand for Cleveland wanting to avoid that situation, but at the same time, sometimes you just have to eat your pride and say, this is a bad contract, right? We paid the wrong guy, and we paid the wrong guy a shit ton of money. And so now, to me as a Cleveland fan, I'm like, okay, you made that wrong decision of giving Deshaun Watson all that money, and now we're just forced to lay in that bed. Like, I understand. Like, it's the same thing that the Jets do all the time, where they make a bad decision, and then instead of just admitting that they're wrong, they just double and triple down on it and refuse. They're like, no, just wait. I promise it's not that bad of a decision. You just got to give it time. And you're like, we've been waiting for 3 years, right? When are we going to give – or we're going to give up on it when the contract's over? Like, at some point, like, to me, you're kind of wasting a window that you have by just praying that Deshaun turns into the QB that he obviously isn't anymore. Like, I've given up. I don't know where the Deshaun Watson that was wearing a Texans jersey went. He's not playing football right now. And that's the bottom line of the situation. So, to me, Cleveland decided to double down on it. It didn't work, and now you just have to lay in the bed and waste the whole effing season away because of pride of wanting Deshaun Watson to work.
He can't get rid of him until 2027. So it kind of is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, Cleveland deserves every bit of flack from the media and the wrongdoing, and the results you get on the field. They deserve every bit of it, right? Everything that Baker Mayfield did for them to just shove him aside and hand a guy who's in the middle of all this legal trouble a fully guaranteed contract to quarterback your team, and it goes south. They deserve every bit of wasting the window and all the things that come to them in the next 2 years while they have to wait out this deal. So
next team, the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think they should be full sellers, but I do think they should sell. If they don't trade T. Higgins this deadline, I don't know what they're doing. Clearly you're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, and he's going to walk. So you might as well let him walk and get something back for him.
Yeah, you're going to have to pay Jamar Chase, right? The holdout before the year, that deal obviously takes precedent. And the bottom line is you can't pay two receivers 20 plus a year. It's just not. And your quarterback 50 plus. It's not winning football. I can promise you that. So again, I think the Bengals kind of failed themselves in this offseason. They're lucky enough to where the AFC is thinned out to where they might be able to luck their way into the 6 or 7 seed, just because of how good Joe Burrow is. But again, you lose Tyler Boyd, you lose Joe Mixon, and they just didn't do anything to replace either of those two playmakers. And again, the O-line has some names. I talked about this last week too. The O-line has some names, but at the end of the day, you picked two tackles that are both notorious for being overweight and not being able to handle elite speed rushers. And you have to play 6 games a year against either Myles Garrett, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, or the Ravens front, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Odafe Owe, David Ojabo, and Kyle Effin Van Noy, who is the AFC Defensive Player of the Month for the first month of the season, dude.
He's had, 9 sacks or something crazy
6.
Like that?
He's had 6 sacks. I think he's second in the league right now in sacks. Absolutely bananas. So, again, to me, their front office just completely handicapped themselves. You lose your OC, you lose your third best receiver, you lose your best running back, and they were like, just run it back. Mm-hmm. Joe Burrow till the day we die. And you're like, till the day you die, motherfucker, Joe Burrow's going to die. What are we doing?
It'll be, I think if you're them, here's what you're hoping for. You trade T. Higgins, because I think he has value. He's played horrible this year, but I do think there is value there. I think, again, you could get that 3rd, 4th rounder, get something of any kind of return on him.
Yeah.
And then you hope you end up with a top 10 pick this year, and then you can take an elite offensive tackle, offensive lineman of some kind.
Yeah.
I think would be the smart thing to do if you're Cincinnati at this point of the year. In 5 or 6 weeks, if Joe Burrow's got any kind of lingering issue, you sit him down.
Shut him.
And just call it a year, because I just don't see a way out of this. I really don't. So,
do you think there's any scenario where Zach Taylor's on the hot seat by the end of the year?
I think I think it's.
Or you think he's there right now?
There's such a weird team that it's so hard to evaluate. Joe Burrow's hurt all the time. Your momentous piece is constantly hurt. The thing is with Cincinnati is they're cheap. So I don't know what Zach Taylor's, contract is. I don't know how much they're paying him. So that would factor into that decision. But, man, I don't think this year, but I think next year, if you have 2 disappointing seasons back-to-back with a healthy Joe Burrow, I think that's kind of the end. So
yeah, and it's one of those spots where I don't know if I'd move off of him, but, dude, it's hard not to think about it when you think about all the talent that's going to be there in the coaching carousel this offseason with the coordinators and the couple head coaches that had to sit out a year and, the possible Tomlin coming available. There's a lot of coaching talent that's going to be around in the tree. So it's just one of those things where you're just going to have to look at the other guys available. Is there any mutual interests, right? How bad do we look at the end of this year with or without Joe Burrow? It's possible.
I think Zach Taylor would be an interesting guy too. He might get a job right away. I could see the Jets wanting Zach Taylor.
Yeah. I could see Carolina wanting Zach Taylor.
Yeah. Because, there you go. I don't think Carolina's going to be looking for a head coach. I think they got to give
Canales.
Canales one more year for sure. So
it's David Tepper, man. You can't predict that. That guy is the
true.
wild card.
The Dolphins, man, this is also. I think it's a little early to tell if they should sell or not. I think we're probably 4 weeks away. By the trade deadline, they'll know if they need to move pieces, I think.
Yeah, and I think Tua is a very, very large piece. Like, if these 4 weeks go by and you're like, Tua's thing, if there is any thought or any realness to Tua hanging it up, sell immediately. Because it's been proven this year, you are absolutely effing nothing without him, right? And so if that guy's going to hang it up, send Tyreek Hill off back to Kansas City, send Jalen Waddle to wherever the hell he wants to go. You send Devon Achane to like
send him to Dallas, baby.
Yeah, send him to Dallas. I was going to say send one of the either him or Raheem to San Francisco, but Jordan Mason's second in the league in rushing yards right now, so there's no real need for it. But like Raheem back in San Fran would be something to watch. Like, I don't know. I do think I agree with you. Like by week 7, week before the deadline, I think they'll know where they're at and what they're going to do. But they are teetering right now. It's very, very close.
I don't know if they fire Mike McDonald, but there is a world where they could.
Yeah, I don't think it happens this year. I kind of put him in the same boat with Zach Taylor, where you're like, it could happen this year. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but I think it goes bad this year. It goes bad next year. Yeah, he's gone. For sure.
Yeah. So, all right, now we're going to talk about Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Should the Colts bench Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco?
I wanted to pick your brain on this because I had this thought. Like I said, I watched that full game last week. I got my buddy Max at work is a Colts fan, so we kind of talked about it a bit. And with the younger quarterbacks, especially we've seen the resurgence of Sam Darnold, right? Baker Mayfield survived his Carolina stint. We've seen quarterbacks get out of where they were originally drafted or just sit for a couple of years and succeed, right? Jordan Love sat with the same team and succeeded. Mm-hmm. And so with how good Joe Flacco looked last week and how good I think he's probably going to look for a good chunk of the season, right? They have some playmakers. The defense isn't awful. Like, is it a terrible idea to sit AR for another year and just try to get him to learn a bit more? My only caveat to that is he sat almost all last year, and I have not seen any leaps from where he was last year to this year. If anything, he's gotten worse, right? Because he went down in week 4 last year. He went down in week 3 or week 4. He went down this last week. Obviously not for the year, but he's gotten injured in week 4 both times. And again, through those 4 weeks, I saw more from AR last year than I did this year. If you take out the stumble 60-yard bomb to Alex Pierce this year, I don't know if there's a highlight for this guy. Well, obviously there's highlights, but I haven't seen anything that makes me go, wow, yet.
So here's the thing with these raw athletes that I don't like sitting them. There's two types of frame of references I think you have to do when you talk about younger quarterbacks. So I think when you talk about your traditional pocket passers, guys who are, they're going to make you're developing their decision making, right? Not just the speed of the game and everything like that. Like Jordan Love, Drake May, I like sitting for a year. I maybe would have sat Bo Nix if you could have sat Bo Nix for a year. That probably would have been okay for him. You know what I mean? But he's learning on the job. But
do you think it's going to benefit McCarthy to sit for a year? Granted, it's
100%
injury, but
McCarthy is it's going to be great for him to sit for a year. He's the perfect example of that. These raw athletes, though, I think you got to throw them out there. Like, I think it hurt Trey Lance not being able to play his rookie year. I think Anthony Richardson falls into that, right? Like, these guys tend to be more sink or swim than the other side, right?
Yeah.
Like, the quarterbacks you named, like Sam Darnold was an elite thrower of the ball at USC. That's why he got picked. What was it, second overall?
Second, yeah.
Yeah, second overall. Because he was elite, right? Anthony Richardson's probably never going to be an elite thrower of the football. It's kind of like Lamar, right? Lamar is a really good thrower of the football, probably a great thrower of the football. Is he ever going to be in that Peyton Manning class? I don't think so.
That's not his game.
That's not his game.
It doesn't discredit to his legs if you were to try to make him do that. And that's the issue that they always run into. You go down 3 to Kansas City 3 minutes into the AFC title game, you're like, 45 passing attempts. And you're like, that's just not who he is.
That's not how you want to play the game. So I think when we talk about these guys, like these guys are sink or swim. Like, I think they should know if Anthony Richardson's the quarterback after this year. So
and to me, I do think it's beneficial for him to sit this week because if he is not absolutely 110%, I don't care if it's 99.5, sit him. Joe Flacco has proved that he can get you through a game and win you a game. And AR has also proved that he is a little bit injury prone, or maybe not injury prone, but he just keeps putting himself in these spots to get hurt. I don't think any quarterback can take the 2 hits I saw him take against Pittsburgh and stay in the game and be 100%. But that's the issue. He's not injury prone, but he keeps putting himself in the spot where he's getting absolutely lit up.
Yeah. And I said they should have their answer by the end of next year, right? And that's about right because this is really his rookie year. He played 4 games last year.
Yeah.
So
no, it wasn't anything.
Guys like him, like I like that Caleb Williams is playing right away. I like that Jaden Daniels is playing right away. Now, Caleb Williams is a great thrower of the football, but he's still just there's so much that needs to be. He needs to figure it out. You know what I mean?
We got to talk about him. I want to talk about him next week. Obviously, we don't have time today, but
All right. With that being said, if you or anyone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, contact the Problem Gambling Helpline at 800-522-4700. Professionals are available 24 hours a day to take your call. Help is available at no cost to the problem gambler or their concerned others. For my hot start, I've gone cold. I'm a cool 6-6. Last week I went 1 for 2. Detroit minus 3.5 versus Seattle. That hit. Arizona minus 3.5 versus Washington most certainly did not hit.
Yikes.
That went the other way.
The Cardinals fooled us all.
They did. I bought in on them, and I shouldn't have. Pittsburgh minus 1.5 versus Indy. I can live with that game. That
was
game
close.
Felt like a coin flip. So 6-6 for me.
Yeah, I started 5-7. I really thought I was going to tie you up. I thought that Pittsburgh and Indy under was going to hit last week. They were one of my bets. They were one of my bets at under 39.5. If you were watching that game, like up until about halfway through the third quarter, I was like, oh, this is cash. Mm-hmm. And then they both traded touchdowns on the opening drives of the third, and I was like, yeah, I'm cooked. This is not going to smack. I was like, I need a field goal for the next quarter and a half. This is not going to smack.
Not happening.
So, Pittsburgh and Indy under 39.5 did not hit for me. Houston minus 6.5 versus Jacksonville. They picked up the win. I believe they won that game, but just couldn't cover that 6.5 spread. They definitely should have, but a win's a win.
Jacksonville is 0-4, so they definitely won. It just I think it was like 20-24 or something like that.
Yeah, D'Amico Ryan says a win's a win. F the spread. Who cares? And then my one hit last week, Minnesota plus 2.5 versus Green Bay. First half, I was like, this is the easiest bet of the week. 28-0 out the gate. Boy, goddamn, they almost gave that game away, but they did enough to still come out with the win, covered the 2.5 spread for me from Minnesota. Puts me at 5-7 on the year. So I'm still just a pick behind you. If we can trade, if I can get a 2-1 weekend and you can get a 1-2 weekend, we'll be right there. But not too shabby. I'm still trying to rebound from I think it was like a 2-4 start to start the year.
Yeah, you had a rough go. So
rough start. We're still trying to battle back into the positives. So
I've got Vikings minus 2.5 versus the Jets. I think with the whole cadence nonsense, the Davante Adams distraction, the Jets will then again show us that they are indeed the New York Jets with making mistakes. Cowboys plus 5.5 versus the Steelers. Okay, this feels like an intuitive line. Go ahead.
Plus 1.5.
Oh, 1.5. Excuse me.
Okay, you said 5.5, and I was like, well, that's cash all day, but plus 1.5. Continue.
It just feels like a game where you read that line, you're like, man, Steelers only minus 5.5. That should be a straight cash. It's a bait line, and I'm taking the other side. I promise you, it feels like Steelers minus 1.5 makes so much sense, but there's a reason. I don't know what it is, but there's a reason. I'm taking the other side of the bait line here. It's the only reason I took that. When I saw that line, I said that line makes no sense from what we've seen so far. I'm taking the other side of it.
Yeah, the only way that doesn't work is if Mike Tomlin, again, tightens his chin strap and just runs all over Dallas. I think that's what they should do. I don't know if they will. That's where that one goes south to me. But even then, the run game, you could still cover 1.5. All you got to do is keep it close or win. So,
in the last game I've got Broncos minus 2.5 versus the Raiders. This is one of those games, two teams, two offenses struggling, right? Neither team is putting up a ton of points. And you're like, man, you normally want to take the points, but this is a Sean McVay special, right? Sean McVay is a better coach than Antonio Pierce, and you got to believe in him for the long term. Like, this is one of those games where I think that switch gets flipped and they're going to put up some numbers. So
I just watched the Broncos and Sean Payton captain a win over the New York Jets and their stingy defense. Bo Nix had -7 passing yards at halftime. He ended the game with 85, and they won 10-9. So I think that goes into both your lines. You look at Vikings minus 2.5 versus the Jets. Again, they just lost to a guy who only threw 85 yards, and you're looking at a possible MVP candidate, Sam Darnold, on the other side, and a great Minnesota defense, a lot better than Denver. Well, maybe not. Denver's been no fly zone so far, and then again, doubling back in against the Raiders, they're probably not going to play Max Crosby or Davante Adams this week, and I think that's something that they really can take advantage of against the Raiders. So, my 3 picks this week, I've got New England plus 1.5 versus Miami.
Wild. I thought about it.
Is it wild? Yes, I would agree with you. I honestly really wanted to bet on Baltimore this week, but it's just bad business to bet on your own team. I think minus 2.5 against Cincinnati should be pretty easy. But AFC North games are ridiculously close for no reason. It's probably a situation where we'd win by 2 and I would lose a bet and I'd want to die. So swapping that pick out, give me New England plus 1.5 versus Miami. Again, this is me just having zero faith in Mike McDonald. Now you got me doing it. Mike McDaniel and his play calling. They just have the ability to run the football and they're not. And, when I look at New England and I'm like, that's a team that's going to take advantage of every mistake you make. Now, the question is, can they avoid making more mistakes than Miami's going to make? That's the big question there. But I like it at plus 1.5. My AFC North under of the week, which have been slapping for me, it did not hit last week. Pittsburgh and Indy again. It looked a lot closer than it was. It was nowhere near close. I think they combined for 50 plus. I think it was 27-24. But if you were watching that game, that was a pretty safe bet through. This one, Baltimore and Cincinnati under 48.5. Now, I will say that is a ridiculously high line for an AFC North under. That's why I feel so confident about it. The reason I don't feel confident about it is Cincinnati has allowed 450 some odd rushing yards through 4 weeks. Guess who has the best rushing offense in the NFL? We do. But again, these AFC North games are so ridiculously close. It does not matter. Joe Burrow could go out in the first quarter. It's going to be a 17-15 game. Why? Because John Harbaugh refuses to put any team away beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt. And again, if this was like a 39.5, I'm probably not going to take it because I think Baltimore is probably going to put up 24-30 in this. But 48.5, I have confidence in our defense that we should be able to shut them down. And to me, the only real breaker of this is if Baltimore does go for 45 or 50 plus by themselves. So my last pick of the week, I've got Washington -3 versus Cleveland. Again, we spent some time talking about Cleveland at the top of the hour. Reeling, playing bad football right now. On the other side, Washington playing the best football that they've played in years. Is there a bit of a hangover after dropping 40 on Arizona? That's something that does kind of concern me that, that there's a little bit of a comeback to earth period for that offense. But Cliff Kingsbury has been calling hell of a game for Jaden Daniels. He, has been setting records as far as rookie quarterbacks are concerned, way through for like 93% completion percentage on Monday Night Football. Yeah. That's fucking bananas. So I like where that offense is rolling. There's some decent picks this week. Like, I think you could probably throw a good 5-legger together and feel pretty confident with some of your picks, some of mine. And I think we still left some on the board. There were still some -3s, some +3s that I felt pretty decent about. So not a bad week to throw some coin out, but you're going to have to pick your spots because it's one of those 50-50 weeks.
Where a lot of those games for sure.
We could go 0-6. We could go 6-0. And obviously that's every week, but It's just one of those where if you can craft the right 4 or 5 together, man, you can make some real money this weekend because there are some bait lines and there's some stuff that you could definitely take advantage of. So that's what I got for the bets this week.
Yeah. All right. I think that's gonna wrap up week 4's episode.
Yeah.
Got anything else for the people?
Yeah, not bad at all. I do. Hopefully, we get some time to talk about Caleb Williams going into next week. We haven't spent a ton of time talking about the number 1 overall pick so far and how they've looked through 4 games. We did have it slated to try to talk about Bryce, or was Bryce in Pump the Brakes?
Yeah, Pump the Brakes.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't get to Pump the Brakes today. Obviously, a lot of headlines. I did like a lot of the Pump the Brakes that Tim cooked up, so we'll definitely get to those next week. But that's going to about do it for week 4, folks. So hopefully you guys can sit in the house and do absolutely nothing tomorrow on Sunday and just watch a whole ton of football. Who wouldn't love to do that? But that's what I'll be trying to do. I can tell you that much for sure. So that's going to do it for week 4 for Red Zone Talk. Until we see you guys next week for week 5, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you then.